Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Best Damn Pod in the Land. I am your host and sports director, Brian Nelson, and with me I have...
The one, the only. Friends call me Andy. Y'all can call me Tank if you like. Andy Anders, your assistant sports editor.
I'm the assistant sports director, Khalid Hashi.
And Andy, I will certainly be doing no such thing. Griffin Strom, your sports editor.
Could you call me Clancy, maybe? My parents were going to call me Clancy.
We'll call you whatever you want to be called, Andy.
I'm going to call you Buckeye Anders.
It's inside joke there.
That is a very much inside joke. Apologies to the viewers. But anyway, we are back with another episode. We're here to recap the Nebraska game and how Ohio State destroyed the Cornhuskers in Lincoln. A night game, college game day was there. Really, I think we all thought that Ohio State was going to win pretty handily. But even then, Ohio State still blew most of our score predictions out of the water. I think mine was the closest, and even then, I was still a score or two off. You know, Andy, what did you think of the way Ohio State played overall?
Well, much to the chagrin of Brian's dad, Clark, who I know watches the show, who is a Nebraska fan. Shout out to Clark.
Yes.
Ohio State was the far superior and dominant team in this game, and I was surprised. Not that they won handily, because I did expect that. My score prediction was 42-17. But the way that it was right from the get-go, Justin Fields, we've been talking about how the mental side of his game has been what surprised us, right? Like, we knew he had these physical capabilities, but he seems really poised on the field. Still hasn't thrown an interception through 5 games. Goes on the road in what is one of the best atmospheres in college football, Nebraska, a very loud place, is able to quiet the crowd, control the line of scrimmage. The fact Ohio State had no false starts or delay of game penalties in that game, and in an environment like that, no false starts or delay of game penalties. That's a stat that hasn't been talked about from this game, but a very important one. It tells you that Fields has control of this offense, and he has great poise, which could serve Ohio State when they do finally play a close game. More impressive than anything to me was the offensive line and the secondary, but we'll get into that later. Griffin, takeaways?
Yeah, Andy, and it's not just 5 games that Fields hasn't thrown an interception. It's actually 155 consecutive attempts, if I'm not mistaken, going back to Georgia. He did throw the ball a few times in his Georgia days, so he didn't throw a pick then either, so that's 2 straight consecutive years not throwing a pick. It's very impressive, to be honest.
Back to high school.
Yeah, and he even said today he still remembers his last interception he's thrown in a game, which happens to be when he was still in high school. It was the same day he actually committed to Georgia. And you can tell he doesn't like throwing those interceptions. The fact that last one is still burned into his mind so well goes to show that he doesn't like throwing those. Those stick with him a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Justin Fields was outstanding as it seems to be like normal now. But my biggest takeaway is the rushing game. They had over 330 yards rushing as a team, which was ridiculous. And J.K. Dobbins had 177 yards and had 7.4 yards per carry, which is just amazing. And then also my other takeaway was this defense holding Adrian Martinez to 47 yards passing. That is unbelievable, especially coming into this game. It was hyped that Adrian Martinez was this dual threat quarterback, the best quarterback Ohio State has faced to date. And in preseason rankings, he was in the Heisman watch list. And for them to hold him to 47 yards passing and have 0 touchdowns passing and 3 interceptions, that defense, man, there's not enough good things we can say about them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I definitely think that both the running game and the defense are things to be talked about. I do want to talk about the running game a little bit more. Dobbins had a really nice game. But another player who really is continuing to have a solid year so far is Master Teague.
Oh, yeah.
He's really developing into, kind of like a new, Mike Weber-ish, player to, J.K. Dobbins, where it's I feel like it's fair to say Ohio State has 2 legitimate running backs that they can use at any given time.
He's going to be the next guy up.
I think people are a little bit surprised that Master Teague has had the role that he has had this season. I mean, they talked all offseason about who was going to be that number 2 guy, but and we have seen Dobbins take the vast majority of the carries, but in his limited time, Master Teague has done very well. He has over 300 yards, and I think every back on the team is averaging 5, at least close to 6 yards per carry, which kind of goes to show you just how dominant that Ohio State running game is this season.
That offensive line, dude, bunch of maulers up there.
Yeah, is it just me, or does Master Teague remind us of Beanie Wells just a little bit?
What? Now that you say it,
I definitely
see that.
And he's a lot faster than you would think he is, because he's such a big guy with big, thick calves and everything.
He's He's got that explosive X factor speed that just really makes you take a step back and just go, whoa.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that, but I'm here for it.
It's a big guy. How is he going that fast?
Yeah.
Right. Well, we haven't seen any hurdles out of Master Teague yet. You guys remember back to those Beanie Wells days? He had a couple of those. But he certainly has looked impressive.
There's definitely time for the hurdles, though. They can still come in future games.
He's only a redshirt freshman. He could have years to come here at Ohio State.
Yeah. Exactly.
The moves he can make in tight spaces are also what really impressed me, to be that big and that shifty at the same time, too. He makes guys miss at the point of attack.
Mm-hmm.
Not only bouncing off people because he's strong, but he makes people miss, too.
And he's just a one-cut kind of guy. So that's what I really like. His explosiveness, he just makes one cut and he's up the field and he's gone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great compliment to Dobbins. Dobbins is still the better back, I think.
Absolutely.
At this stage. But by the end of his career, Teague could reach that level, even surpass it, I think. He's got a lot of potential, and he's a great complement in this offense. We've mentioned the offensive line yet. We haven't gotten into specifics yet. The team had 368 rushing yards. 368 rushing yards against the number 41 rush defense in the country. Not that Nebraska is the best rush defense out there. They certainly aren't the worst. I'd say they're above average. And 368 rushing yards. You look at the breakdown of Dobbins' 177 too. 177, that's a great game. Didn't have a run longer than 26. That means he's consistently breaking off. I think he had a double-digit amount of runs that went 10 yards or more. Mm-hmm. He's consistently breaking off those chunk gains, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 yards. And the offensive line is getting this great push where he's getting to the second level of the defense. He's 3 or 4 yards up the field already before he's contacted. Then you see his ability, the strength that he has. He always falls forward, always keeps the legs moving, carrying extra guys with him on the runs, picks up that yard or two at the end that a lot of backs can't get. He is tremendous this year at finishing his runs behind that mauling offensive line. Going back and watching the tape, Wyatt Davis really stood out to me this past game. The right guard was getting a push, it seemed, all the time. He and Josh Myers have a great tandem there working at center. Allaby stepped up at right tackle after Brandon Bowen went down. Thayer Munford, we know what to expect with him. He's been good. And Jonah Jackson, the transfer from Rutgers, man, the most physical presence on this line so far. All the knockdowns we talk about. There isn't a hole on that offensive line, and it's really impressive to watch.
And we're not even mentioning some of the backups that can step up if a hole was to appear. I'd say they may be a little greener, but they're just as capable in terms of talent and skill. Talking about people like Nicholas Petit-Frere, Ohio State's offensive line is scary good.
Very good.
The whole offense, man. There's no hole unless someone gets hurt, and I think that main someone would be Justin Fields.
Yes.
I actually mentioned this. I am now of the opinion, after these 5 games, I know Ohio State hasn't really played anyone so far, really. Nebraska, you could call them a top 40 team, same for Cincinnati. They haven't played a ranked team yet, but I think the only way this team doesn't go undefeated in the regular season is if Justin Fields gets injured, because there's no holes on this offense. There's not.
Yep.
And that speaks volumes because coming into the season, there are so many questions on the offensive side of the ball because they lost 3 star wide receivers, they lost their star quarterback, and they lost a bunch of offensive linemen.
4 of them, 4 starters, yeah.
Yep.
So it was a lot of question marks, a lot of inexperienced guys that were coming into bigger roles this season, and for them to be playing this well, it's comparable to last year's offense, and they may even be even better than they were last year.
Yeah, and you're starting to see people, commentators and speculators across the country start to move Ohio State into that number 1 spot here in the last, especially since the Nebraska win.
Mm-hmm. I know Joel Klatt's the one guy who's had them in this top spot for a couple weeks.
Yeah,
now.
he's been championing them all week. I think Herb Street has Ohio State up there now, and some other thing had them number 1 spot. Scott Frost said he voted Ohio State number 1. Ryan Day said today he chose not to divulge who he puts in those spots with his coaches' polls.
I don't think. Can you vote for yourself in the coaches' poll?
Maybe,
I don't know, but I feel like if he could, he probably would.
I feel like,
a lot of coaches would is the thing, though.
Yeah, I feel like the common denominator though are these social influencers and these commentators and analysts. It's always the guys who actually cover that game for Ohio State who actually go on notice and go, okay, this Ohio State team is for real. Mm-hmm. Like Joel Klatt, he's been covering Ohio State since I think week 1. And then you had Kirk Herbstreit for the first primetime game come out and say, oh yeah, this team is for real. So I feel like as you start seeing these primetime games and these bigger analysts come out, then they're going to start jumping on board saying Ohio State's the real deal.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about how the offense is complete, but I definitely think the defense arguably looks even more complete.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to tell which one is more complete.
You know what's
it's
funny?
But like, let's talk about this defense.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about like how like Adrian Martinez was like a Heisman watch list contender, and it's not even like that they shut down Adrian Martinez. Look at some of the receivers they also shut out. They shut down J.D. Spielman, Wandale Robinson. They shut down some really talented players.
I saw a post on Instagram the other day where somebody said, which 1-2 punch would you rather have? J.K. Dobbins and Justin Fields, or Chase Young and Jeffrey Okudah? And honestly, I was scratching my head for a minute. Like, that's a really good question, but I think I might have to go with that defensive tandem of Jeffrey Okudah and Chase Young. Those guys have been beyond amazing.
And Okudah especially had a phenomenal game.
Yeah.
Like, it's like he got the first interception against
said,
Miami.
you know
He's
what?
like, you know what? I actually like getting these interceptions.
Yeah, I like doing this.
I'm going to get more. He got 2 more. Like, in the first quarter, I think, against Nebraska. And like this first one was on Nebraska's first drive, which was like coming off that unnecessary roughness penalty, and just like took all the momentum away from the Cornhuskers. And then like Ohio State immediately scored. And like as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, yeah, that's how this game is going.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
you're fine. I was done. Actually.
Okay, cool. I think what again we talked about in the past, the ability of this defense to adjust in game. Nebraska came out, I think it was the 3rd drive after they'd been stymied in every other facet of their offense. They came out and ran a classic triple option I formation offense that we'd never seen. Even threw the Maryland I out a couple times. The 3-back set behind the quarterback. And it was interesting to see that they drove down the field with it once. Okudah made his second interception to stop that drive, and then it never worked again. It's, again, the ability of this defense compared to last year to adjust. And I think what allows that, as much as the coaching, as much as the ability to look in game that Jeff Hafley has from the press box, because he's in the box during games, to look down and say, okay, this is what we need to fix, get that message to the sideline as quick as possible. It's also the versatility. The fact that these guys, this week against Nebraska, I saw them make 8 plays in man in the secondary. I saw them make great plays in zone in the secondary. I saw them do it with blitzes. I saw them do it rushing 4. Everything. They can do everything as a defense. So when you can do everything as a defense, something might work against you for a drive. They might surprise you. You might not be ready for it. They reveal something new. But 2-3 drives later, the same stuff won't work again.
Yeah, I agree.
Against this defense.
Yeah.
And I thought it was an interesting point that both Hafley and Madison were talking about. They were kind of surprised that Ryan Day actually used one of those timeouts when that I formation was really looking effective for Nebraska there early on, and Ryan Day chose to use one of his timeouts to stop. It was almost like a basketball timeout, how a timeout's used in basketball, where like a team goes on a run and you use that timeout to try to stop the momentum. You don't see that as much in in football, but that's exactly how he used it there. And Hafley said, like with other offensive coaches and stuff in the past, he's seen like they won't let the defensive guys use those timeouts. But that kind of shows you that Ryan Day isn't just looking at the offense; he's looking at the whole picture and deciding what's best for the team.
Mm-hmm. Another defensive player that I want to bring up that I don't feel like gets talked about a ton. You're looking at like Okudah and Fuller had the interceptions that made them stand out, and then Chase Young is Chase Young. But someone who had a great game was Malik Harrison. Can we talk about him for a little bit? He was everywhere on Saturday.
He's been very, very, very consistent.
Couple linebackers, man.
Yeah, Pete Werner too.
Pete Werner, Baron Browning's really stood out. He's slowly supplanting Tough Moreland to that middle linebacker spot, I think. Mm-hmm. Not that Tough Moreland's has done a bad job this year, far from it, but Barron is such a talent, and he's everywhere, like Malik Harrison is. Now, Ohio State, we've talked about in the past, Ohio State's linebackers are night and day from last year. They actually...
Credit to Al Washington.
Yeah, credit to Al Washington for sure. You see videos, too, of him pumping them up before the games, man. Those get you hyped just watching that video on Twitter. I had another point I wanted to make about this defense. But, yeah, the linebackers have been really impressive and really deep. Harrison, specifically, we all knew he was the most physical presence on the defense, right? Even last year he had a lot of big hits. But this year it's been a consistency to be everywhere, to be in on a lot of plays, not just those 1 or 2 where he's making a big shot on someone in the backfield.
Yep. And Baron Browning talked about today with Al Washington that he attributed a lot of his improvement this season to he just feels so much more comfortable with Al Washington as his position coach this year. And I feel like that energy is like you just said, like you can definitely feel that energy from Al Washington. He seems like the type of coach that you want to play for. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
I just remembered the other point I wanted to make.
Please.
I said last week's podcast that I was excited to see Ohio State go up against the playmakers in space, the J.D. Spielmans, the Wandale Robinsons, because, last year when they had success on defense, which wasn't as much as pretty much any other year ever at Ohio State, and last year's defense was historically bad for the Buckeyes, they struggled against athletes like that, the Rondale Moores of the world, the J.D. Spielmans and the Wandale Robinsons of the world. And they were better against teams that tried to run straight at them, like Michigan, like Wisconsin, who they didn't play, but Wisconsin's that style of offense, and Cincinnati's that style of offense. Indiana, talent mismatch. Nebraska was the first team that I thought had playmakers in space. I was interested to see them. J.D. Spielman had like one catch.
Yeah.
They
JD
combined for 2 catches.
They combined for
15
2
yards.
catches,
Yeah.
and 2 passes intended for each of them were intercepted.
Yep.
Yeah.
They completed as many passes to Ohio State's defense intended for those 2 guys as they completed to those 2 guys.
Yeah. The highest receivers for Nebraska in terms of yards and catches were their running backs Maurice Washington and Dedrick Mills. Washington had 2 catches for 10 yards, and Mills had 1 catch for 10 yards. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Wandale Robinson had 1 catch for 8 yards. J.D. Spielman had 1 catch for 7 yards. They were
Secondary,
completely
man,
shut down.
The BIA. Best in
Even
America.
even the linebackers, like Pete Werner was everywhere.
Had that huge hit too.
He had that huge hit.
Not something you've seen from him a lot. He's even playing
I'm
physical
telling
this
you,
year.
he's looked fiery this year. He's
He
had
has.
several plays where he's just fired up.
I'll admit I was a doubter of him, but he's proven every doubt I had wrong.
Also,
and I know
Jordan Fuller.
yes.
Well, yes.
Jordan
please.
Fuller's been great, man. He's been anchoring that back end of the secondary, and he's been the leader. He's been, I think, a 2-time captain for this team. So, and now his play's showing up great, and the secondary is all coming along together. You have those 2 guys on the corners, Damon Arnett and Jeffrey Okudah, are both physical, both want to press and both want to get in the guy's face. But now that they're playing this zone and this new scheme, these guys are being able to play fast and play with instinct. And then you have Jordan Fuller back there, who's just making sure that no pass goes over their head. And when you have a great defensive line with those guys, like you guys named earlier, Chase Young, Jonathan Cooper, and those guys, able to get pressure on the quarterback and make them make quick decisions, then you have guys that are super talented like the secondary. This defense is just coming along very well. They're a complete defense for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say. I know we almost sound like homers right now because there's just no weaknesses
They're
that you
just
can.
that good.
You can't. There's no weaknesses you can really point to on this team right now.
Yeah.
I just can you think of any? Honestly.
Even special teams is really, really good.
Yes,
Well,
they
the-
blocked 3 kicks. The punter. I mean, we know what Chris.
The only weakness this team has, and that's something we have mentioned, is quarterback depth. If Fields gets hurt,
Yes.
then Ohio State is in trouble. Even then, I still think they were very good, but I think you could safely say they're not national.
And Ryan Day's been
contender.
putting Justin Fields in great positions to where he isn't putting himself at risk of injuries. He's sliding a lot better as each game goes on. He's even acknowledged that that's something he's not really used to doing. He hasn't done that all through high school, and he's throwing the ball away a lot more. And he was asked today if he gets tired of Ryan Day saying that's his favorite play, which is when he throws the ball away. And Justin Fields says no because it's smart. It's a smart thing to do. He's even got to improve on and keep doing that. And it's something he's not used to, but the fact that he's getting better at it, I think it is great for the way the depth is set up at quarterback position for sure.
Still completed over 70% of his throws, and you haven't seen too many designed. We saw more designed runs with him against Nebraska than we've seen in the past, and
And I think that just was playing to Nebraska to advantages against Nebraska's defense because their secondary isn't as deep as their defensive line was.
right. But yeah, the coordination on those designed runs was perfection. That 3rd and 10 run, that Q keep around the right side.
Yes.
Hadn't shown that. It seems like every week I talk about his offensive coordination. He's able to pull out a new play every week where you just go, wow, that was beautifully schemed.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I don't think we've seen a glimpse of Justin Fields' run game because I think Ryan Day's kind of saving it for the bigger games as the season goes on. He's preserving his health.
Yeah.
Right now, we're just seeing glimpses where Justin Fields only really running if plays really break down and the field is wide open. But those design plays that are supposed to be runs for Justin Fields, I feel like we're going to see that more and more often as the season goes on.
And then I do want to say the main reason I feel like we're all talking about why we think this team will go undefeated And the main reason for me is when I look at the defense, I don't think there's any offense on a team that's on Ohio State's schedule that can beat this defense completely enough where Ohio State's offense won't be able to match that or be better.
Yeah,
Like Wisconsin's offense is probably like the most impressive right now, especially with Jonathan Taylor in the year he's having. But even then, Jonathan Taylor, like Wisconsin's going to run Taylor right at Ohio State's defense. The defensive line is easily the strength of Ohio State's defense. And even if he gets past the defensive line, the linebackers have been playing fantastic. And the secondary is going to stop any passing attack from Wisconsin.
Yeah, I don't think Cone has the arm to beat him through the air. He's called upon to do it.
And Cone's been playing very
No,
well.
he has.
Yeah.
No knock against Cone.
Yeah.
It's just that Wisconsin's offense always matches up poorly against Ohio State's D because they do the best against teams that try to run straight at them. This year they happen to also be doing well against playmakers in space. No team has been able to consistently come out with an attack where you say, okay, that could work against this defense. We said it before. Every time a team comes out and does something for a drive or two that's working, the next drive it doesn't work anymore.
There's only one team that ranks top 5 in both scoring offense and scoring defense besides Ohio State, and that's Penn State. So that's the only team that I would look out for on the schedule where I feel like they can match up well against them. But even then, I still feel like Ohio State is still the better team on both ends of the game.
As we sort of wrap up this Nebraska section of the podcast, I'd just like to say you talk about the eye test in the past, and the eye test is something that's hurt Ohio State in the committee's eyes. They've passed the eye test with flying colors this year, I think. That's the point we're making. Really, the only team that you could even argue, I think, that even compares to Ohio State eye test-wise is LSU, just because they had that game against Texas. Clemson hasn't looked very strong, despite all the talent they have.
Alabama's defense has been injured.
Yeah, injured and hasn't been up to their normal standards.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Oklahoma's been solid. It's just like their defense isn't necessarily
I don't
as
believe
strong
in any
as-
Big 12 defense. Period.
they were
defense-
next to last year. You don't go from next to last to championship level in 1 year.
Their offense looks fantastic.
No,
though.
their
Jalen
offense
Hurts
always
is-
looks
yes.
good. Though,
yeah, but like Jalen Hurts is having a fantastic year that should not be overlooked in any capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Clemson this year's almost looked kind of like how we've seen these Ohio State teams look in the past few years, where everything is going red on paper. They're still winning these games, but you just see these stretches of play from the team where it just kind of confuses you.
Clemson reminds me of the 2015 Buckeyes.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what we were talking about.
Yep, all the talent, but then just like it doesn't seem to get put together right away.
Yeah.
And then, as you saw with that Buckeye team, they end up losing one at the end of the season and derailing their championship hopes. Might not happen for Clemson because of their schedule, but
hey, they almost lost this past week.
They still have Wake Forest, man. That Wake Forest team is ranked now.
I don't necessarily see Clemson losing that game, but it's a difference for me thinking that there's no chance that Clemson would ever lose to Wake Forest to me thinking that it's not out of the realm of possibilities.
If Clemson keeps playing the way they're playing right now, and there's a one-loss SEC team and the Big Ten champion, I don't know. I feel like there could be.
If they go undefeated
a
and win the
case.
ACC, you have to put them in.
Yeah.
You have to
I mean,
put them in.
yeah, you have to, but I don't know. It gets tough. I think
There's
they
no-
should-
there's
If
no-
they lose a game, I don't think they should be in if there's like a one-loss SEC
Yeah.
non-champion that's deserving.
I think they should extend the college ball playoffs to 6 games.
well, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
At the very least, there's no undefeated Notre Dame to have in the discussion. Necessarily for
Yeah,
playoffs and
nobody
that.
cares about Notre Dame.
Well,
Not that.
Wow, way to offend my mom there. But,
sorry, mom.
Well, we're
but
shouting
anyway,
out both of Brian's parents.
yes. If you're gonna
those
shout out my
watching
dad, I'm
at
gonna
home?
shout out my mom. Okay. Anyway, let's move ahead to talking about the game this week. Let's talk about Michigan State and the way Ohio State matches up against them. Andy,
Before we get to that, Mom, I'm just saying, if Notre Dame, as long as they do not join a conference, I believe they do not deserve to get into the college football playoffs again.
I mean, I can't disagree. Brian, what were you saying?
Yeah, go on.
I was talking about something actually relevant to this podcast, but you do make very good points that I'm not going to say.
I just don't want
anymore.
her thinking, I'm just like.
No, of
you
course,
know,
of
going
course.
in
No,
on-
it's a legitimate point, and I think my mom would even agree with you. She's objective when it comes to football.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, Michigan State preview. Okay, Andy, how do you think Ohio State's going to match up against Michigan State?
This is going to be the best defense they played so far, so it will be interesting to see the offensive test that brings. I think Michigan State's offense, though, 71st total offense, 83rd in rushing, 70. I think it's somewhere around 60th in scoring.
61st, I believe.
61st in scoring, 71st total, 83rd passing. Does not, and has done it, really put up those numbers against crap defenses. Like the time they scored 7 points against Arizona State.
Yeah.
And then
They've been
also
really,
lost that game.
They've been really shaky. Like at some points they look really, really good. At some points they look bad to where they can't score against teams like Arizona.
Brian Lewerke has shown this is his third year starting now.
Being
He's shown in the
excellent
previous two.
starting quarterback.
Stop it. Does not have the arm to beat elite competition. He's not enough of a threat with his legs to beat elite competition. Yeah.
However,
This isn't. I'm sorry. Nothing against Brian Lewerke. Obviously.
Hey, he's leading the Big Ten in passing yards right now. So
He's
definitely got an arm. Yeah.
He's got a nice first name.
And on top of that,
Completion percentage, though.
yeah,
Completion percentage.
Thank you,
that's
Griffin.
pretty off.
Anyway, Michigan State's offense. They don't have the offense to keep up in this game. This could be close through a quarter and a half. But when they're going 3 and out all the time, and Ohio State's offense is able to move the ball at least somewhat against the studs that Michigan State does have on defense, they'll be worn out by the third quarter. It's that classic football conundrum, and Ohio State will really take over this game, I think. Brian, what are you thinking?
I kind of think the same thing, really. I do think Ohio State should not underestimate Michigan State's defense, just because I think this defense has a lot of depth to it and a lot of experience, as opposed to Nebraska's defense was very young and inexperienced. They maybe had talent, but they could get worn out easily, which is what happened. I think Michigan State's going to be able to stick with them a little longer, and I think they might be able to make some plays that might force a turnover here or there, and maybe just like change the tides of momentum to give Brian Lewerke and the Michigan State offense maybe a flash of life that could turn into some points easily. I do think overall Ohio State's going to be able to outmatch them, and maybe I'm just going off base, and this is going to be another blowout like all the other games that have been, especially since this is actually in Columbus and not in, East Lansing. So, that also has to factor into that somehow.
Right. I mean, they do have playmakers though. They have the running back Elijah Collins and the wide receiver Darrell Stewart, who are putting up pretty big numbers. As Collins has 413 yards and 3 touchdowns,
less than 60%. I'm looking at that passing percentage.
And then
again.
Stewart has almost 600 yards and 3 touchdowns. So they do have playmakers, but as we know, as the season has gone on, Ohio State likes to take those playmakers out of the game completely. So
413 yards in 5 games. Ohio State's backup almost has that much. The Stewart is an impressive receiver to me, very impressive, and I think Collins is a talented back, but he's running behind a line that I don't think is going to come near Ohio State's D line. Darrell Stewart's the main matchup that'll be interesting to see, but if you put Jeffrey Okudah on him all game, one receiver ain't going to be enough, I think. The defense is where most of these playmakers are, right? Joe. Anyone know how to pronounce that last name correctly? Bashi.
I'm not going to mess up. This is
all right. Joe. Their linebacker Joe. Okay. Joe Bashi. 47 tackles in 5 games.
Yeah.
That is on pace for well over 100 on the year.
And he's not even their most talked about defensive defender.
Yeah, 5.5 tackles for loss, sack and a half. Even intercepted a pass. Does everything. Is everywhere for that defense. Then obviously Kenny Willekes, right? Kenny Willekes is the one everyone talks about. Already 3.5 sacks this season. How many did he have last year?
I want to say it was like
8. He had
top
8
5 in
last
the
year.
Big Ten.
Yeah, 8 would be top 5 in the Big Ten. He had 8 sacks last year. Very, very lethal pass rusher off the edge. Almost there, Chase Young, if you will. Not that I think he's Chase Young, but he's very close. Very talented defensive end. In the secondary, Xavier Henderson, an Ohio recruit, who I think will be very motivated in that game. Has always been a presence for them back there since he came. I think Ohio State came close to offering a scholarship, but did not to him, if I remember correctly. He's had a very good career at Michigan State. 27 tackles from safety, intercepted a pass. Doesn't lead the Michigan State defense in interceptions, though. That would be Tyreek Thompson, who also has 24 tackles from linebacker. Their linebackers are very athletic and defend the pass well. And I think that's going to be an issue when you talk about trying to complete some of those underneath throws, those shorter routes, the bubbles that Ohio State might try to run for playmakers in space. But I think what could work against them, you talk about this straight up, does Michigan State have the depth on the interior defensive line, the defensive tackles, to get penetration and plug up these Ohio State offensive linemen that have been mauling teams? Does Michigan State have enough defensive back depth for when Ohio State tries to take the top off with its litany of talented receivers? And then Fields is always the X factor with his legs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I will say, the Ohio State coaching staff tends to be complimentary towards other teams before games, in these Tuesday press conferences every week. But I don't know if I've heard Ryan Day thus far be as flowery in his compliments towards any one player as he was towards Kenny Willekes today. He was saying that he thinks he's one of the best off the blocks that he's seen in the Big Ten in the past few years. He was saying that he seems to be in on every tackle. When he watches a clip of film, he's always the one making a play. And it'll be interesting to see how he will match up with that Ohio State offensive line this week.
Yeah, he already has 4 sacks on the year, so he's definitely he's been everywhere, really.
Just some quick statistical context. Michigan State statistically on defense, 7th in total defense. What is it? They are 14th in scoring defense against the pass. They are 37th, and against the run, 4th. So, like I was saying, I think passing game, you have that depth at receiver for Ohio State, and Fields just shown he made some really nice throws against Nebraska last week.
He did, yes.
Especially that drop he had to Benjamin Victor.
And that touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson.
Yep. Oh, perfect over the shoulder throw. Those were he's made some NFL throws. And I think it'll be maybe we've seen in a lot of games this year for Ohio State, the running game opening up the passing game. It's what they did against Nebraska, what they did against Cincinnati. I think this week it could be the other way around, passing opening up running. You get some of those downfield completions, then open up, then kind of clear out the box a little bit for Dobbins and Teague to work.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think my main takeaway from Michigan State's defense is I just simply don't think over a course of 4 quarters they aren't going to be able to stop the run. I think Dobbins, Teague, even Fields, even they can throw in like DeMario McCall or Steele Chambers if they want to be flashy.
I don't know about that one.
I don't know about that one, but I just think Ohio State athletically is just going to be able to overpower them. Mm-hmm. And then not even just athletically, you look at the skill the offensive line has and the plays that they can make in terms of creating lanes for Dobbins and Teague. I just think that Michigan State over the course of 4 quarters is not going to be able to hold up, especially if their offense isn't getting the job done and it has consecutive 3-and-outs.
Yes, yeah, exactly. The fatigue is a huge factor for the defense in this.
And the spread for this game is, what, 17?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing to point out, this is Ohio State's first ranked matchup of the season.
It is. They're tied for 25th.
Mm-hmm. Tied for 25th against Texas A&M team that I'm not sure how they're actually ranked still.
Lost twice now.
They've lost twice, and they're...
Oh, because Clemson needs a ranked opponent in their schedule.
Well...
I don't know.
But
I don't know.
Well, that's
another discussion.
That's another discussion. We should do like an overall like podcast talking about all the other teams instead of just Ohio State. That could be interesting.
We've already got enough on our plate.
Yeah. But I mean,
no, I need more.
I need more. I need more stress.
I mean, Texas. Just to step on the soapbox a little bit. Texas A&M's best win is against Arkansas, and they barely beat Arkansas. Their other wins are against Texas State and Lamar. I didn't even know Lamar was a team.
not FBS.
So
yeah.
I'm just saying.
Right.
You know, then again there are 2 losses are to Clemson and Auburn, so that could be why. But even then, resume has to count a little bit, right?
I will go on record and say this will probably be another 40-point victory for Ohio State.
All right. I'm not too far from you on my score.
I think I'm trying to figure out my exact score.
Just because I think Day isn't going to let off the throttle as much as he has in other games. I think that we saw it against Nebraska. The more he's scared of a team, the more the quality opponent he might not tell you this, and he won't say this to the media. But the more quality of an opponent he thinks a team is, the longer he keeps the first teamers in.
Yeah.
The longer he keeps the foot on the throttle.
I think what supports that is you look at like Ohio State, it's like last drive right before halftime. I think most people just expected them to run out the clock, and then Day immediately threw a passing play. and just like tried to drive the ball, and they eventually ran out of time, but still.
And he kept talking about after this past game that fumble by Jamison Williams on that kickoff or punt return.
Right.
And they recovered it, but he referred to it several times, saying like, oh, if Nebraska had scored there, then suddenly Ohio State's right back in the game, or suddenly Nebraska's right back in the game. And I'm thinking like, I don't know if a lot of other people would have seen it that way, but he seemed to be pretty sure that it would have been a game if that happened. So
I would say something that's really good about the mentality of this
team.
It
would. The key with that is it would have brought the crowd back into the game, which could have given some life to the team. It is a momentum changer. And credit to Nebraska's crowd, they were there the entire game.
They were.
And so if anything had happened, they would have been brought right back into it. Mm-hmm. And it was a loud crowd early on. So
great atmosphere for college football. And I think, another credit that we heard Dobbins in the postgame say that they don't look ahead. They truly don't look ahead. And that's a cliche. But he specifically pointed the example, like he was here when they lost to Iowa in 2017 and ruined their playoff chance then. He was there when they lost to Purdue last year and ruined their playoff chance then, He's been through it before, and he's saying, from experience, I'm not looking ahead past anybody. And I think the leadership on this team is kind of emphasizing that. So there might not be a letdown, quote unquote, for this Ohio State team for that reason. I don't think they're looking past anyone. But yeah, I think we're approaching time for scores, I think.
Yeah, I do think we're approaching time for scores. Get our score predictions out there. I think we all seem to think Ohio State's going to win pretty handily, but who wants to go first?
I'll say 47-7.
Wow. Interesting. That's a 40-point victory exactly. Well, why is it so tough? What are you thinking?
Michigan State's got a real defense.
That offense.
They're going to be worn down, and Bay's not going to take his foot off the throttle.
Yep.
That's what I think.
38-10.
Okay. 42-6.
It worked for me last week. Let's go 49-7. I had 49-14.
You wouldn't dare.
I had 49-14 last week, and that got me to win. I'll go aggressive again, 49-7.
None of us said a shutout, huh?
Nah, I don't see a shutout.
They get something. They get something.
They always get some type of momentum, drive down the field, and then they get stopped.
What didn't they beat them 52-3 in 17, I think.
Yes.
That was the one time. Usually it's close. Usually it's closer than
you
that.
want to go higher, but you
didn't. I just keep going conservative.
I think this game, they do have a good enough defense, they'll keep them below 50.
And just barely for me.
If they had a better offense, I would not. That defense is definitely the caliber to hold Ohio State below 40, but their offense isn't going to be able to be on the field long enough, and Day is still trying to make a statement, I think.
The reason why I have Ohio State scoring so much is I don't think Day is going to take Fields. I don't think he's going to take the pedal. He's not going to pull off the throttle. Words, but I think and I think that's just going to lead to eventually Ohio State's going to get a lot of points. I think in the second half we're going to see more points instead of just them just trying running out the clock, knowing they got the game locked up and everything. I think Ohio State's going to try and make this even more of a statement than Nebraska. So
yeah, I changed my mind. It's 45-10.
45.
I think 47 is kind of a weird number.
45-10?
Yeah,
all right, fair. Okay.
I'd give them a field goal and touchdown in garbage time.
Yeah. How would they even get 47? That is an interesting number. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I had to think.
Safety,
yeah. That's not happening, yeah.
They could.
Safety, field goal, 6 touchdowns. That would be 47.
Yeah, they could. I mean, Ohio State's defense, they could.
Or 5 touchdowns and 4 field goals.
I don't think Ohio State's going to get 4 field goals. But, I mean, they definitely
don't
have the
utilize their kicker enough.
Well, they have the kicker.
He's 3 for 4 through 5 games on field goals. He hasn't been out there for field goals. He's been out there for a lot of extra points. It's almost like 35 or 36 of them, right?
Something like that.
He'd be on my fantasy team, that's for sure.
Picking a kicker is almost like picking an offense in fantasy because that's how much does he
score a lot.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. If I'm picking any kicker, I would probably pick Oklahoma's because they score so much. Anyway, I think we're pretty much done with football. Do we want to move on to other sports?
Yeah.
Other Ohio State sports? Griffin, we want to talk about women's hockey a little bit? They opened up their season last weekend.
They did. They started off 2-0 with that season opening sweep against the St. Lawrence Saints, as a matter of fact, Brian.
That is true, and as we saw from the women's hockey recap from our lovely beat writer from Lantern Practicum, Randall Miller, Ohio State had a cover behind win against St. Lawrence, actually.
Oh, yes, they did.
They were down 2-1, I think, in like the final minute of the game, and then they scored 2 goals like in the last minute to take the lead and get the win 3-2. And that bodes well for this team. Like, this is an Ohio State team that last year did not have as much success as they thought they would necessarily, but they're still a top 10 team. And getting off to a good start against a team like St. Lawrence is pretty key with all the talent this team has.
Yes, indeed, Brian. And those Buckeyes, they got that 3-2 victory on Saturday. And what was it on Friday?
4-1.
4-1. So yeah, they were putting up some goals. Pretty high scoring game for them. And not the people you would expect necessarily in that second game either to kind of signal the comeback there for them. I believe it was a freshman actually who was it here? Yeah, it was Tegan Inglis, a freshman for Ohio State, that had a goal in that game, her first of her career. And she ended up with like a game puck, I see as well here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And then I think the other 2 goals were Madison Bizal, which is not surprising. And then Emma Malte had one. She had the last one. Yeah.
Khalid over here pulling out his phone. He doesn't know anything about the hockey teams.
Yeah. Apologies for the viewers if you don't know women's hockey team, but Griffin and I were the beat reporters for Lantern Practicum covering the team last year. So
They're very good. You should know the hockey team.
I'm gonna go to a game this year.
Their games are actually very exciting. I generally enjoy covering the team a lot.
Yeah.
And the players were a lot of fun to talk to.
Live is pretty lit.
Yeah, I mean, men's hockey is definitely what people would probably pick most of the time, but the women's hockey team is very good, and even more so I think this is the team that has a chip on their shoulder with how like last season was kind of a disappointment, and they had lost a few people. Lauren Boyle's definitely one that stands out to me, but they have most of their talent back, especially now that Andrea Brandley is now a sophomore, so she has a year of experience under her belt.
Right. I know a little bit about the ones. Don't they have a player who plays for their national Olympic team?
Well,
Bradley, right?
Andrea Brandley was Brandley. She was on the Olympic gold medalist team, I believe.
That's crazy. See, I know a little something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was. Yeah, and that was before she even came to Ohio State.
That's crazy.
Dude, that's crazy.
That is crazy. No, I did a feature on her last, like when I was covering the team, and then like I sat down with her and just like, you were an Olympian before you even came to Ohio State. Where do I even begin?
Yeah.
So, but definitely a good start to the season. I'm looking at their schedule, and Griffin, they play Wisconsin in 2 weeks.
Yeah, but they actually had success against Wisconsin last year. They didn't get like a sweep or anything, but they won series at Wisconsin. Actually, they won both games in like an overtime win, which doesn't count for the same. It counts as just like a tie.
It counts as a
and
tie,
then like a bonus point. So it's kind of weird rules there with women's hockey. Mm-hmm. But I mean, really, those were basically 2 victories over Wisconsin, even if the points don't reflect that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think they split another series, and then maybe got swept in the last series.
Yeah.
But they were competitive with them, actually, and I think they even had the jump on Wisconsin at some point in the last, or maybe it was a game and not a series, to when they got eliminated from the WCHA tournament last season.
That would be correct, yeah.
Surprisingly, in hockey, aren't some of these like smaller schools like predominantly better at hockey than others?
It's like specific areas.
Specific areas.
Yeah.
Minnesota, Wisconsin.
The North and the East.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of Minnesota is amazing at hockey. Like Minnesota is one of their premier teams, both like men's and women's hockey.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's very good.
There's a lot of East Coast schools as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of East Coast schools they would not necessarily hear of. I think Wisconsin's the number 1 team in the country for women right now, and then I think Minnesota State is the number 1 men's team. I think that poll just got released.
Where's Ohio State ranked?
Ohio State is
number 9 in women's.
Number 9 in women's. They are number 11 in men's.
So number 9 versus number 1.
Yeah.
In Ohio State versus Wisconsin.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of top matchups.
Wow.
And Minnesota's a top a top 5 team, I believe. They play Cornell, I believe, later in the season. Cornell's very good as well. They got some tough matchups going up. So it's going to be interesting to see whether
the Frozen Four.
They made it 2 years ago, and a lot of us were expecting them to make it last year, and they fell short. But if they
Redemption year.
Yeah, Revenge tour.
We know how that worked for
Men's hockey on the
specific
men's
team
side.
up north.
Yeah, men's hockey. Let's move to men's hockey.
They befell a similar fate last year, right? Fell short of expectations. Opened the season ranked first in the country with one of the nation's best players in Mason Jobst in his final season at Ohio State. And I think a lot of people expected them to do a lot better than they did, getting eliminated earlier in that national tournament.
Yeah.
They start out ranked 9th this year, and they'll be on the flip side of that, right? Instead of being expected to be one of the best, if not the best teams in the country, they're kind of on the outside looking in as far as those playoffs go.
Yeah, it's more they have to prove it this year.
Right, they're ranked 9th. Do have some talent returning. You've got Carson Meyer back at forward. You've got Tanner Lasinski back at forward. You lost Jobst. You lost Dakota Joshua, who were 2 of the 3 top points. Two of the top 3 points totals on the team.
Yeah. And Jobst was one of the best players in the country as well.
Yes.
I think he's on the Islanders now. Like, he's actually in the NHL.
Right. Lasinski, though, very good in his own right. 6 points less than Jobst last year, but played 9 less games.
Yep.
And at his rate,
he had a crazy year.
yes. And if you look at it per game, he actually had more points per game than Jobst did.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be, I think, the key for the attack, along with Carson Meyer, who's back. Ronnie Hine was actually second on the team in goals last year. As far as the goalie goes, who is the Romeo is gone, but so it'll be interesting to see how they fill that void. I knew they had a good goalie. I just couldn't think of the name for a second there. But yeah, Romeo will be gone.
We have so many names to memorize for football alone.
Yes,
Keeping up with all the sports is a bit more difficult. So
right, it'll be Napier.
Yep, Tommy Napier.
Napier. They split time last year. It'll be Napier's team this year. Yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see how he does now fully in that role.
Yeah, I saw Napier and Lasinski, I think, both got nominated for some type of preseason award the other day, maybe yesterday.
Well, let's check.
And I'll do no further research to figure out exactly.
Right. We don't need to know. Yeah, they're looking for some redemption. I think last season was disappointing. Hopefully for them, this season they exceed the expectations.
Yeah, Griffin, you were right. Lasinski was voted to preseason All Big Ten first team, and Napier was second team. So that's what they got nominated for.
Yeah, I think they've got some games to figure it out. You've got Western to kick off the season in 5 days. Western Michigan on the 11th, followed by Bowling Green on the 12th before they take on Omaha at home in Columbus.
Yeah.
If I remember right, Omaha has a decent hockey program, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Western's an exhibition game, so their actual season doesn't start till in 2 weeks. But it will be our first
right there.
But it will be our first chance actually getting to see the team in action.
Right.
So.
And then Mercyhurst before they open Big Ten play. So.
And they open up with 2 very tough teams, Big Ten wise. Yes. Michigan and Notre Dame are both very good in hockey, and playing at Notre Dame is not easy as well. Because I think Notre Dame was second in the Big Ten last year. Ohio State was first. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see whether the Buckeyes can match up this year. Like last year, they were on flying high. They were doing great, and then they just collapsed essentially at the end of the season. It's just like I think it's like they won the Big Ten. It's like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
So.
I think we're going to round out our non-football sports coverage here with some women's volleyball. We haven't really talked. I don't think have we talked about women's volleyball yet on the pod. I don't think we
haven't gone in depth. We've talked about in passing, just like mentioned. Oh, hey, they won a game here, there.
Right. So they had a 5-game win streak that ran from the 13th of September through the 25th. Just snapped it against Michigan, who is one of the best women's volleyball teams in the country. But the 5-game win streak now 8-6 on the season. Ohio State women's volleyball, they've enjoyed a nice breakout season from Kylie Murr, their freshman, was named Defensive Player of the Week 1 week in the Big Ten.
The Big Ten Diggs leader as well.
Right, 266. You've got Mia Grunza back for another season. She's had 141 kills. Far and away leading the team in that category. And Gabby Gonzalez has had a nice little breakout year, 75 kills, along with Lauren Lauren Whitty and Vanja Bukalic. They have 79 and 77 respectively. Kind of a nice round out attack there. Oh, Elle Sandboth, didn't even see that at the bottom of the stat sheet there. 80 kills. I know she's been there for a while. Sandboths have had multiple players come through, if I remember correctly. She's kind of a legacy at Ohio State, right? I think her sister played.
Yep.
So yeah, the volleyball team has I think they're developing. They've got a lot of youth on the team. It'll be interesting to see what their season unfolds as. But it was nice to see a 5-game win streak from them. Kind of turning the season around a little bit after a weaker start.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. It's always nice to, please, Mike, cooperate with me. It's always nice to build momentum and just get off to a good start and really just start to build chemistry as a team. If you're mentioning how they're a younger team, it takes time to actually coordinate, and especially a sport that requires so much teamwork like volleyball. So the fact that they're getting wins this early is very big. So, but unless we have anything else to add, I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to mention. If you want to give shouts to your moms and dads, I know mine's been put in the spotlight.
Shout out to my mama, I guess. She gave me a really nice, sweet text today, saying that the most recent story I wrote made her cry.
Mm-hmm. It was a very good story. Everyone
really good story.
Listening to this podcast, go read Andy's story. It was
Thanks.
It's fantastic. Great journalism,
great work,
and great writing. Definitely a must read. But I do believe that is all we have time for today. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Best Damn Pod in the Land. Please stay tuned. We're going to have our preview show coming out soon for the Michigan State game, and then stay tuned for all of our coverage against Michigan State Saturday night. From Andy Anders, Griffin Strom, and Khalid Hashi, I'm Brian Nelson, and this has been the Best Damn Pod in the Land.
Yo, peace.
Peace out.